Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. Our broadcast today features a conversation from our most recent Metis Strategy Digital Symposium on the topic of combining artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things to drive digital processes. The conversation featured Vagesh Dave, the Chief Information Officer of McDermott International, and Danielle Brown, the Chief Information Officer of Whirlpool. And the gentleman who led the conversation was the Vice President and Head of Metis Strategy's Central Office, Michael Bertha. Mike, welcome. Great to speak with you.
Always happy to be here, Peter.
Well, Mike, let's go into that topic, combining AI and IoT to drive digital processes. Those are certainly two very important trends, so no surprise this would be something we tackle. But that said, I'd love to hear in your own words as to why you found that to be a salient topic for our digital symposium.
Yeah, as you said, two powerful trends, even more powerful when combined. We see clients across multiple industries digitizing as many processes or experiences as they can to increase the volume and variety of data that they can collect. And then aggregating that data across the different dimensions of an organization, functions, business units, and using that as the basis to apply AI and machine learning to create insights and predictions that they can feed back into the digitized processes to make them more automated and more intelligent. And so we thought it would be great to bring in a great combination of speakers to articulate how they're going towards this combination, AI and IoT, within their own organizations.
Well, let's talk about that briefly, if we could. So I mentioned Vagesh Dave from McDermott International and Danny Brown from Whirlpool. Why these two leaders as people who personify the trends you just described?
Sure. I think it was largely driven by IoT often being thought of in two schools of thought. The first being industrial IoT. And who better to speak to industrial IoT than Vagesh? He's one of the industry's leading thinkers around digital twinning, a major application within AI. And then on the other end of IoT, consumer IoT. Who better than Danielle Brown, leader of one of the largest consumer appliances companies in the world? So we thought that would be an interesting juxtaposition.
Thank you for that overview, Mike. Without further ado, let's get into that conversation, combining AI and IoT to drive digital processes, featuring Vagesh Dave of McDermott International, Danielle Brown of Whirlpool, in conversation with Metis Strategy's Mike Bertha.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it. So as Peter said, got a great panel. So to tee it up, I think we all know that Internet of Things is increasingly used as the tool, one of many, to increase the volume, variety, and velocity. And then artificial intelligence is used to create insights and predictions that can be embedded into digital processes to make them more intelligent and make them more automated, and continue to improve these processes with each iteration of the closed loop aspect of IoT and AI. So I'm very excited about this panel today, since we're going to talk about IoT and AI in a consumer and industrial setting with our panelists. So Danielle, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the virtual stage.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Of course. So you're the CIO of Whirlpool, the world's leading kitchen and laundry appliance company, sales of around 20 billion, about 78,000 employees, and more than 50 manufacturing and technology research centers around the globe. So I was wondering if you could kick us off by telling us a little bit how IoT and AI fit into the strategy at Whirlpool.
Sure. Thanks, Michael. So at Whirlpool Corporation, I like to start from the bigger picture first. And our vision at Whirlpool is really to be the best kitchen and laundry company in constant pursuit of improving life at home, which we all know is what we experienced over the last 18 months has become even more evident and important regarding how that life at home actually, how that occurs on a day-to-day basis. And so as a company, we're pursuing that vision by driving 4 strategic imperatives globally. And by the way, all 4 of those strategic imperatives have technology and data embedded all throughout. For example, our first imperative is around delivering product leadership, which has been a hallmark of the Whirlpool Corporation from the genesis of the company. And so, but in today's modern times, delivering product leadership means that we think about the digital twin of the product. It means that we think about the data and the digital thread of that data all throughout the product lifecycle. So that's our first imperative, is delivering product leadership. Secondly, our other imperative is around redefining what a product is. And so that's where you start to think about leveraging how you can leverage IoT and data to create new digital products and new digital services as well for our consumers. And then our third imperative is really around winning that digital consumer journey. And that's really thinking about the platforms and the technology that enable us to enable that journey and gain insights all the way from the pre-purchase part of the process through purchase through post-purchase part of the process. So the insights that we have in enabling that frictionless journey is how we'll be able to win that consumer journey. And then lastly is about reinventing our value chain. And that's really where you start to also think about the end-to-end visibility across the entire supply chain, as well as adding in automation and analytics into operations and manufacturing, really driving that manufacturing 4.0. And so Whirlpool's strategic imperatives are tied directly to putting technology, including IoT, including AI, at the forefront of the company, really focusing on that digital consumer engagement, as well as value optimization within the operation space. So it's a great time to be technologist, to be in the digital space, and to be a CIO.
Wow, thanks, Danielle. That's really comprehensive, and appreciate that response.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll turn to you, Vagesh. You're the global CIO of McDermott International, and your firm focuses on engineering, procurement, and construction activities for some of the largest oil field development projects in the world. So it seems that oil and gas, or energy as an industry, has really recently doubled down on digital technologies and are really leaning into IoT as a key enabler. I was wondering if you could maybe share your perspectives on some of the forces behind that double down focus right now, and what opportunities do you see for IoT and AI?
Sure, definitely, Michael. McDermott, we do onshore, offshore development, whether it's offshore for building platforms or onshore LNG plants or ethylene crackers. But again, end of the day, we're in people business. So as we started our journey a few years ago in digital space, the focus was on, okay, how do we reduce the cost, but how do we improve the safety in everything we do? So we look for opportunities in our yards, on our vessels, in our construction sites to improve productivity. But at the same time, we look for opportunities where we can do things remotely. So we don't have to send people in harm's way, and we can actually improve just overall safety and quality of life for people who work for us. Now, as I look at the change, this is in a post-COVID environment, in a hybrid work environment, we are now exploring more of this technology. So can we do things more remotely, where folks don't have to travel? Also, can we do things in a sustainable manner? Our customers are asking for this. So now, as we look at a lot of data that we have collected over the years from our yards, our vessels, and a lot of other assets, we're merging them in a data lake to gather insights and say, okay, we're doing things in a more efficient way, but now what does sustainability means for us, and how do we do it in a more sustainable way as we build the assets so our customers can not only operate them in a sustainable way, but we start to design and engineer them in a very sustainable way.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Vagesh. Shifting back to you, Danny, when we had our prep discussions, you mentioned some really unique product innovations, which is one of the pillars that you mentioned, and some interesting partnerships. I'm wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit about some of the product innovations and partnerships, maybe some of the use cases they unlocked, and if IoT and AI plays a role in enabling them, maybe you could highlight that.
Sure. I'll start with some of the use cases. So at Whirlpool, we have predictive models that are actually in operation today. And if you think about the maturity model for analytics, from descriptive to insights all the way to foresights, if you will. Within Whirlpool, we are moving up that maturity model and using these predictive models in our team by our global teams today. For example, in consumer behavior, for example, we leverage AI to guide consumers to those products and services that they are most interested in based upon, how they go across our website and the things that they click on. It helps us use those models to really point them and guide them in a certain way so that they can get to the products that are most useful for them. As well as when you think about the post-purchase part of that process, internally, we also use AI today to help identify and solve different service calls more quickly as they come into our operations. Additionally, I'd add there are also opportunities to use data science in order to enable remote diagnostics. When you think about our products and think about, this is basically when you have signals from the appliances in order to alert when a product may be starting to experience an issue. So long before it triggers, an error code or actually breaks down. So that's the power of some of these models. So just think about, the information, even in these use cases that I just mentioned, and the value that can be unlocked from those use cases. It's data that we can leverage for quality. It's data that we can leverage for product development improvements, and it's additional data that we can leverage for consumer benefits and services. So harnessing that actionable information, and actionable being the key here, is at the core of how we at Whirlpool can continue to improve the lives of our customers. And then, Michael, as it relates to partnerships, with our strategic imperative that I mentioned around redefining the product, which, as I said, is around developing new digital services and digital products on top of our core products. We are, in fact, working with core partners in the home ecosystem. So, for example, we have new functionality with voice commands that integrate with Google Assistant and Alexa-enabled devices that work with our smart products that are currently in market today. So the bottom line, for me, the way that I see it is the keys to success to unlocking the value really includes a couple of things. It includes great innovative products, which is at our core for Whirlpool, high-performing tech stack. What I mean by that is best-in-class apps, as well as the right platforms in place, compatibility with major ecosystems and partners for us, that's Google and Apple and others. And the key there being creating those frictionless experiences for the consumers. And then lastly, connected services from an infrastructure perspective. So those are, I view, as the keys to success to unlocking that value.
Well, that's great, Danny, and I think it really illustrates a strong ecosystem externally, and mentioning some of the really key tech enablers and the process and experience enablers as well. I really like that. So Vagesh, and Danny mentioned this earlier too. One of the things that seems to be a really compelling digital enabler in the oil and gas space among a lot of industrial spaces and even consumer is the concept of a digital twin. It's a really pertinent topic for this panel since it leverages IoT as well as artificial intelligence and several other technologies that I haven't mentioned. I'm wondering if you could explain this sometimes difficult to grasp concept of a digital twin and how IoT and AI play, and what kind of outcomes from a business perspective this can help drive in the oil and gas space.
Great, Michael. So McDermott, we started our journey on the twin, probably ahead of everybody else. And we are quite mature, at least in terms of what we are doing with design twin. And when we look at digital twin, we kind of look at design twin and operational twin. The original goal was to really capture a lot of data from our assets, whether it's a vessel that's actually constructing something offshore, or a crane operator, or even a cherry picker trying to do something on a construction site. We collected a lot of data from this, and that kind of allowed our customers to have that data when in operating phase of the asset. And Danielle talked about leveraging a lot of data for getting insights. And we've been doing that for the last few years, where a lot of our guys who either work in marine or they work on construction sites can actually look at a lot of data from their assets, how they're operating it, and they're doing it more efficiently, and get more insights. And from IT side, what I had done is I kind of said, okay, we are in the business of building any reports. So we will enable large analytics and data where business can actually go and visualize it, and they can play with the data. And really their job is to get insights and make better decisions. Now, when I go back to the twin, one of the things we are now working on is a lot of our customers are coming and telling us, look, we are able to operate a lot of things that you build, whether it's LNG plant or it's an offshore platform, in a very sustainable way. How can you start from the way, just from the original design and constructions, right? And carry the sustainability theme all the way through. And Twin allows you to do that. The design tool allows you to capture a lot of those things, a lot of data around, the carbon content in steel. Our engineers can design around that. And they can actually, from the very start, design the asset in a sustainable way and provide the same twin to customers where they can actually reduce the carbon footprint through the life of the asset along with the cost. And we've made a lot of progress in this area in terms of allowing our workers in a yard to automate a lot of things they used to do, using either sensorized, Uberized model for our assets, but now they can efficiently leverage a particular asset in a yard by providing them a mobile device where they can actually book a particular assets like cherry picker or forklift, which not only allows efficient use of the asset, but also allows them to measure the efficiency of the workforce in our yards and our construction sites. And again, the use cases just tend to evolve, Michael. In the post-COVID world, we are now seeing how do we allow engineers who work remotely to collaborate with customers using either a 3D model review, using virtual reality type stuff. We have done a lot of remote inspections. We have started at all our yards to kind of put in models where customers can remotely kind of join and do a 3D review of the model without getting to the yards physically. And this space continues to evolve. I'm really excited. I think this is why one reason I think it's an exciting time to be in IT now, because IT has taken up just a front stage in enabling the business in post-COVID environment and really just infuse a business with technology, which is moving at a very, very rapid pace.
Well, that's so good. And I really appreciate that explanation. I think digital twin is something that is very compelling, but it's one of those more difficult concepts to wrap your head around unless you're very familiar with the topic. Obviously, you are in that case. I think the last question, maybe I'll just frame for both of you, is just as you started to bring in that additional data from the IoT devices at a higher velocity, different variety, higher volume, and you start learning with AI and machine learning, are there any unique customer insights that you'd be willing to offer, and without any competitive intelligence or learnings that you guys would like to share with the group?
Yeah, maybe I'll start and then Vagesh can add on. So I will keep it for competitive reasons, higher level. But what I will say, is what we focus on at Whirlpool is the use cases, right? The high value use cases that engage the consumer, right? And want them to interact with the product and allow that to guide us versus just coming out with technology or functionality or features just to have a lot, right? Because that can actually disengage the user when you have so many things, not all of it work, et cetera. So we want to focus on what are those high value engagements that we can have with the consumer that are reliable, that are dependable, that help make their lives easier with the routine things that they may have to do in the home. So that would be my kind of add here, is that when we do focus on those types of use cases versus tech and features just for the sake of it.
So Michael, I would say, not all data is created equal. So as you look at the data, you want to be very, very selective which data you keep, which data you use right away for insights. And I'll give you an example. We have sensorized our vessels that we use in offshore construction, and other installation activities. And we collect a lot of data from all equipment on the vessel. But we are very selective what data we bring back and we store for longer time versus what data we actually at the vessel site. We use algorithms to generate insights because data becomes a liability over time if you're not using it the right way.
That's great. Both of you guys on that answer, I appreciate it. Danielle taking a really customer-oriented perspective, not using technology for the sake of technology, but trying to address a pain point or capitalize on opportunity. Vagesh, totally, that goes right in with our enterprise data lake and making sure that high quality, high value data is what we go after. So Danny and Vagesh, really appreciate your time. This has been a great panel, and thank you for your willingness to join us.
Thank you, Michael.